The first scream rose so suddenly from so deep in the canyon that even the wind seemed to choke on it and fall silent. Elowen Vale froze on her cabin porch, lantern trembling in her grip. The beam flickered across the sparse clearing pale. Sagebrush, the broken fence post she kept meaning to mend, and her lone chestnut mare tossing nervously in the corral. The sky was moonless, too dark even for stars, the kind of night where shadows felt alive and listening. Elowen had heard coyotes scream, men scream, even mountain cats scream. But whatever this was, it was none of those. The sound ripped straight through her ribs. The second scream didn't come. Instead, the trees rustled to her left slow, heavy, deliberate. Something was moving, stumbling, crashing through the brush like it had no strength left. She set down her lantern and reached for the rifle leaning beside the door. "Please," she whispered to whatever was coming, "be a bear. Or a drunk, or even a ghost. Anything but." The branches snapped open, and a man fell into the clearing. Not just any man. An Apache warrior, tall, broad, bare-chested despite. The cold, his skin streaked with blood and dirt, his long black hair tangled with bone beads and feathers. His necklace, made of turquoise and polished antler, glowed faintly whenever the lantern flickered. He staggered toward her like he'd been walking for miles on broken legs. Elowen lifted the rifle instinctively. He froze not out of fear, but refusal. Even near collapse, he held himself upright like a mountain refusing to fall. "Please," he rasped, voice sandpaper rough. "Don't do that." Elowen's heartbeat slammed painfully against her ribs. Not "don't shoot." Not "don't run." Just don't do that. Like the sound of a rifle clicking into place hurt him worse than the wound. And then he dropped to his knees. Elowen's breath left her. He was bleeding, badly. Dark red poured through his fingers where he clutched his ribs. She should have run inside, barred the door, pretended she never saw him. But then he swayed and crumpled face first into the dirt. And she couldn't just let someone die on her land. "Damn it," she whispered. She dropped the rifle, grabbed the lantern, and ran to him. His skin burned under her touch. Fever, infection. There was an arrow buried deep beneath his ribcage black-fletching, metal tip smeared with something sticky and foul-smelling. Elowen's stomach turned. "Poison," she breathed. The Apache's eyelids fluttered open. He met her gaze with startling sharpness. His voice was a brittle whisper. Not Apache arrow, white man, that was worse. She shouldn't have dragged him into her cabin, but she did. It wasn't compassion. It wasn't foolishness. It was instinct. A deep, stubborn instinct that refused to let someone die because the rest of the world said he should. Elowen grunted as she lifted him. He was impossibly heavy, even half dead. She half dragged, half carried him across the porch, pushing the door open with her shoulder. Inside, the lantern spilled pale light across wooden shelves, a stone hearth, a table cluttered with herbs, rope, and the half-carved piece of oak she'd been whittling to calm her nerves earlier. She laid him on the table and stepped back, breathing hard. God, he was even more injured than she thought. His back was slashed, his shoulder bruised black and blue, his breathing uneven. His chest rose slowly, like each inhale asked permission. Elowen pressed a cloth to the wound. Blood soaked through instantly. "You're losing too much," she whispered. "This arrow has to come out." He blinked slowly. You know medicine?" "A little. Enough. To save me?" she exhaled shakily. "We'll find out, won't we?" He attempted. The ghost of a smile, barely a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but agony drowned it quickly. Lightning crackled outside, followed by a deep rolling thunder. A storm was sliding in from the mountains. She found her knife, heated it in the fire, and steadied herself. "This is going to hurt." His eyes fluttered open enough to meet hers. "You saved me," he whispered. "Pain is fine." She gripped the arrow shaft. He tensed. "Please." He murmured again, barely audible. "Don't do that." "Do what?" she whispered back. "Apologize." "Before hurting me." Her breath caught. She had no reply, so she pulled. The arrow slid free in a burst of dark blood. He screamed a sound so deep it felt like the house itself trembled. The storm outside swallowed the noise, thunder roaring over it. He went still. Too still. "Elowen," she whispered to herself, "what in God's name have you done?" She stitched him quickly, packing herbs around the wound, praying fever wouldn't claim him before sunrise. When she finally stepped back, her hands were shaking. He was alive. Barely, but alive. She sat beside him on the stool, breathing hard, studying his face more closely. Strong features, high cheekbones, jaw like carved stone. A thin scar across his lower lip. A streak of white paint still clinging to his cheek. A warrior, clearly, but not just any warrior. Someone important. Someone hunted. Rain hammered the roof, sharp and relentless. Wind howled through the cracks. Her candle flickered dangerously low. She didn't notice she drifted into sleep sitting upright. A fist pounding on her door ripped her awake. "Elowen!" A voice shouted through the storm. "Open up!" Sheriff Brody. Her blood froze. She looked at the Apache on the table unmoving, blanketed in her only decent quilt. "Stay quiet," she whispered, as if he had the strength to do anything else. She opened the door only a crack. Sheriff Samuel Brody stood there drenched in rain, hand on his holster. Behind him 2 deputies. "Elowen," Brody said, wiping water from his mustache. "We're tracking a fugitive Apache. Dangerous. Killed a ranch hand. Seen near your property." Her grip tightened on the door. "I haven't seen anyone." Brody narrowed his eyes. "You sure?" "Positive." He leaned closer. "People say you live too far from town. Too quiet. Hard to know what you get up to out here." "What I get up to is minding my own business." Brody held her gaze for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he stepped back. "If you see anything, you tell us right away. That warrior's worth a noose." Her throat tightened. The deputies turned their horses. Brody climbed onto his, pulling his coat close against the rain. "Elowen," he called without turning, "if you're hiding him, pray you never find out what the law does to women who protect Apaches." He galloped off into the storm. The moment the sound of hooves faded, Elowen closed the door and leaned her forehead against it. Her cabin felt suddenly too small, too quiet, too dangerous. She turned to the man on her table. His eyes were open. "You should not have lied," he rasped. "And you should not be awake," she replied sharply. His breathing shook. "They will return. I know. And others will come. Your people?" she asked. "No," he whispered. "Others, hunting me." Elowen felt a strange chill wrap around her spine. "What are they hunting you for?" He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted a trembling hand and pointed at the black-fletched arrow she'd placed on the counter. "That arrow belongs to a man who wants war," he murmured. Elowen swallowed. "Who?" His eyelids drooped. "Someone your town trusts." The storm boomed overhead. Lightning flashed. And for the first time that night, Elowen felt truly afraid. At dawn, Elowen stepped outside to fetch water. Her breath caught. A dust cloud rose far across the valley. Riders. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Feathers. War paint. Spears glinting in the early sun. Her knees nearly buckled. 200 Apache warriors were riding toward her cabin. Her cabin. The thunder of approaching hooves struck the ground long before Elowen saw the riders, but when she finally did, her breath left her in a single helpless gasp. 200 Apache warriors rode in a great sweeping crescent across the valley, a wall of color and motion that made the morning look unreal. Their horses moved together like a living tide, hooves raising dust that hung in the sunlight like smoke. Spears glinted. War paint shone. Their faces were carved with focus and fury, and they were heading straight toward her cabin. Elowen's knees trembled, but she forced herself to stay upright on her porch. She had lived through fires, storms, and men worse than both. She could not run now, not with a wounded Apache inside her home and 200 of his people watching her like hawks. Behind her, inside the cabin, she heard movement. Takoda, the man she had dragged out of the dirt hours ago. The man whose blood soaked her table. The man the town wanted dead. The man whose people were now surrounding her life like a noose of feathers and arrows. Elowen! Takoda's voice was barely audible, rough with pain. You must not be on that porch. They do not know your heart. They only see danger. She didn't move. I'm not hiding, she said. Takoda slowly rose from the table. Every muscle in his body protested. His breath hitched. Sweat glistened on his skin from fever. But he stood, hands bracing on the table, refusing to look weak. You saved my life, he whispered. But my people do not know you did not hurt me. They only see my blood. They see your cabin. They assume. They can assume whatever they want, Elowen said fiercely. But I'm not letting a wounded man face 200 armed warriors alone. Nowhere in hell does that make sense. He looked at her, then truly looked. Pain flickered in his eyes, but also something else. Awe. Maybe even gratitude. The kind that went too deep for words. Elowen Vale, he murmured, you do not know what you are choosing. You don't know what I've already chosen, she replied. A horn sounded across the valley, a low, resonant note that vibrated deep in her chest. The riders slowed. Horses snorted clouds of steam into the cold morning. Drums began a steady, rhythmic thump that echoed her heartbeat. Elowen swallowed hard. Takoda, what do I do? He dragged in a breath. When they stop, step back. I will speak. You must not reach for any weapon. You must not run. You must not interrupt our elder. Elder? She whispered. Takoda nodded. Makoni. He commands respect beyond any man in this land. Her mouth went dry. Will he kill me? Takoda hesitated, which was answer enough. The warriors stopped in a great semicircle around her cabin. A single rider broke off from the front, an older man with silver streaks in his long black hair, his face painted in white ash, his spear adorned with feathers that fluttered gently. He dismounted in one slow, fluid motion. 2 warriors flanked him, carrying shields painted with red spirals. Takoda stepped outside, gripping the doorframe for support. The sight of him standing bare-chested, wounded, feverish made Elowen's heart ache. The elder Makoni approached. His gaze moved from Takoda's wound to Elowen's face, holding there far too long. Finally, he spoke. You should not be alive, he said to Takoda, voice deep but calm. Takoda bowed his head. This woman saved me. The elder looked back at Elowen. You pulled the arrow? She lifted her chin. I did. Makoni's brows lowered, his painted expression unreadable. You have skill. And courage. Few white women in this land would save one of us. Most men wouldn't either, Elowen murmured. Takoda shot her a look that begged silence, but Makoni didn't react with anger. Instead, something softened in his hardened features. You risked your life for a stranger, he said. Why? Elowen didn't hesitate. I don't let people die on my land. Not if I can stop it. Makoni considered her answer, weighing it like something delicate and dangerous. Then his gaze flicked to the black-fletched arrow lying on her porch railing. He stepped closer, lifting it between 2 fingers. This, he said darkly, does not belong to our people. I know, Elowen whispered. Then you also know what this means." Her stomach nodded. She didn't know, not really. But she knew enough to be afraid. Takoda spoke, voice strained. "Elder Makoni, the man who used that arrow, wants war. He killed a ranch hand and blamed it on me. He hunts me still." Makoni raised the arrow to the light. "The man who shoots these arrows is no friend of ours. Nor of yours." Elowen felt her skin prickle. "Who is he?" Takoda's jaw clenched. "The town gunsmith. Elias Mercer." Elowen's breath caught. "The gunsmith?" "The quiet man who fixed her rifle 2 months ago without charging her." Everyone in Whisper Creek trusted Mercer. He was gentle, polite, calm. A man who carved wooden toys for children. A man who apparently had dipped arrows in poison and shot them at Apaches. "Elowen," Makoni said, turning toward her fully, "you are now tied to this truth. Because you pulled this arrow out of my warrior, you have touched the first spark of a fire that will burn your whole town." Her throat tightened. "But I didn't start anything." "No," Makoni said gravely, "but you stepped into the middle of it." The warriors murmured in agreement. The wind suddenly felt sharp, as if carrying warning. Takoda swayed, leaving a trail of blood down his side. Elowen moved to steady him, placing a hand under his arm. He stiffened in surprise but didn't pull away. Makoni watched with narrowed eyes, not disapproval, but curiosity. "You care for him," he said matter-of-factly. Elowen nearly dropped Takoda's weight. I don't know him." "You saved him," Makoni replied. "That is enough." Takoda closed his eyes briefly, breath unsteady. "Elowen risked her life," he said. "The sheriff came in the night. She lied to protect me." Makoni's face darkened. "Then the sheriff believes a lie. He tells the town the Apache killed a ranch hand." "He said that to me," Elowen whispered. "He lied to you," Makoni said. Elowen shivered, hard. The world she knew felt suddenly unfamiliar, as if the ground beneath her feet wasn't her land anymore. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. Makoni stepped close enough that she could see the lines age had carved into his face. "Tomorrow," he said, "we go to Whisper Creek to demand the truth of Elias Mercer's crime. We will not shed blood unless forced." Her heart hammered. "We want you," Makoni continued, "to walk with us. To speak for what you saw. To stand beside Takoda." Elowen's pulse stuttered. Takoda looked at her, feverish yet steady. "I will not let harm come to you," he promised. But Makoni shook his head. "War does not ask permission. If you stand with us, you stand against your own people." Elowen's hand tightened on Takoda's arm unconsciously. "And if I don't?" she whispered. Makoni did not answer. He didn't have to, because 200 warriors moving behind him made the truth as clear as a sunrise. Refusing them meant they would burn Whisper Creek to the ground without her. Elowen closed her eyes. Tears threatened, hot, unexpected, unwanted. She swallowed them back like sand. "When do we leave?" she whispered. Takoda looked at her in awe. Makoni nodded once. "At dawn." The warriors set up camp around her cabin fires, forming a protective ring. Drums rose into the night. Elowen couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the flames. Takoda limped out, lowering himself onto the step beside her. "You did not have to say yes," he murmured. "Yes, I did." He looked at her, really looked, and something shifted between them. Something neither had invited, but neither could deny. "Elowen Vale," Takoda whispered, voice rough. "You have changed my fate." She turned to him, heart pounding. "You changed mine too." Above them, sparks rose into the dark sky like fleeting stars. And tomorrow, the morning broke with a silence so sharp it felt like the world held its breath for what Elowen was about to become. Fire embers still glowed in circles around her land from the Apache camp, but the drums had quieted. The warriors prepared their horses in hushed movements, tightening straps, checking arrows, muttering prayers into the cold morning. Elowen saddled her mare, Willow her hands trembling so badly she could barely fasten the cinch. Takoda watched from the shade of the pines, leaning against a tree for support. The fever had broken during the night, but he still moved like a man whose bones were made of pain. The wound at his side had reopened twice. He hid it from the other warriors, refusing to show weakness. But he couldn't hide it from her. "You shouldn't ride," she said quietly as she approached him. "Warriors ride," he replied. "Even broken ones." She frowned. "You're no good to anyone if you fall off your horse halfway to Whisper Creek." He gave a faint grin. "Then I will not fall." She tried not to stare at him. But she did. The morning light turned the edges of his hair to bronze. His jaw was tight with pain, but his eyes, dark, aware, unfathomable, held something like calm. "You should stay behind," he said suddenly. "You still have a choice." "Elowen Vale does not run from bad odds," she said. Takoda's gaze softened. "That was your father's saying." She blinked. "How do you—" "I listened last night," he said. "You talk in your sleep when nightmares come." Her stomach twisted. He had heard. He had heard everything. The gunshot. The memory. Her father falling from his horse, blood soaking the sagebrush. Her screams echoing across the valley. She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." "You do not have to be," Takoda murmured. "Nightmares do not choose us. They only live with us." She didn't answer. She couldn't, because Makoni approached just then, riding a massive bay stallion. His presence silenced even the wind. "Takoda," the elder called. Takoda straightened instinctively. "Elowen will ride behind me," Makoni said. "You will stay at her side. The rest will follow." Takoda nodded. Elowen mounted Willow shakily. The elder raised a hand. 200 Apache warriors fell into formation quiet at first, then thundering into a slow, unified trot. The world seemed to shift under her. This was happening. She was riding into her own town with an army, and there was no turning back. They moved through the valley at a steady pace, the sunlight gleaming off spear tips. Birds scattered ahead in frightened bursts. Dust rose behind like a great rolling storm. Takoda rode beside her, not touching, not speaking, but his presence felt like a shield she didn't know she needed. "Tell me," she said quietly, "why Mercer wants you dead." Takoda's jaw tightened. "He hunts our people. He sells stories to the town about Apache raids that never happened. The sheriff believes him. Men in the valley believe him. It makes them feel like they have a simple enemy." She stared ahead. "Why you?" Takoda exhaled. "Because I am the one who found proof. Mercer left markings on trees after the ranch hand was killed, markings I learned were his personal sign. A gunsmith's flourish. He was proud of his work." Elowen shuddered. "You confronted him?" "I went to his cabin. I told him I would speak to your sheriff myself." "And he shot you?" Takoda nodded once. "I ran, barely." Her hands tightened on the reins. "Takoda, Whisper Creek trusts that man. Children run to him for free bullets dipped in chalk so they can pretend they're hunters." His expression hardened. "Some monsters hide behind quiet smiles." The words cut deeper than she expected. She whispered, "Are you ready for what we're about to walk into?" He glanced at her eyes steady, but lined with fear he tried to hide. "No," he said. "But we walk anyway." By noon, the outskirts of Whisper Creek appeared brown rooftops, the tall steeple of the church, smoke rising from chimneys. The general store. The saloon? The sheriff's office. Everything looked the same. But the feeling was not the same. Not with 200 warriors approaching. People were already gathering, pointing, shouting warnings. Horses spooked. Children cried. Doors slammed. The town's single bell began ringing frantic, offbeat, panicked. Maconie held up his hand. The warriors slowed to a halt 100 yards from the edge of town. Elowen could see Sheriff Barlow emerging from his office, rifle in hand. Other men followed ranchers, shopkeepers, stagecoach drivers. A dozen rifles aimed at the Apache line. Then 2 dozen. Then more. Elowen. Barlow yelled, voice cracking. What in God's name are you doing? Her throat tightened. She hadn't planned what to say first. Maconie nudged his horse forward. Elowen followed. Takoda remained at her side, jaw set, hand near the hilt of his knife. Sheriff Barlow's eyes dropped to Takoda's wound and narrowed. So the Apache did attack you. And you brought the whole damn tribe with you. No, Elowen said sharply. Listen to me, Sheriff. A new voice rang out. Elias Mercer stepped through the crowd, wiping his hands on a cloth, calm as a lazy Sunday. He looked at the Apache force without blinking. Then he looked at Elowen. Elowen, my dear, he said, you must be terrified. Did they force you? Takoda made a low growl in his throat. Maconie raised the black-fletched arrow and held it high. This, the elder said, is the arrow that tried to kill my warrior. Whispers rippled through the townsfolk. That arrow, Maconie continued, voice rising, was carved by the hand of the man who stands behind you now. All eyes turned to Mercer. Elowen swallowed. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She guided Willow 2 steps forward. I pulled that arrow out of Takoda, she said, voice cracking but loud. Sheriff, it's not Apache-made. It's Mercer-made. Mercer's smile didn't waver. Elowen, that's impossible. You're frightened. They confused you. Takoda rode forward just enough that his shadow fell across Mercer's boots. You shot me, Takoda said quietly. In the dark. Near the creek. Mercer laughed. You're delirious, boy. Maybe Elowen mixed up your wound. Elowen's hands shook. Sheriff, she said, look at the fletching. Black crow feathers burned at the tips. Mercer uses that on his hunting arrows. Barlow hesitated. Elowen, he said, eyes darting nervously. This is serious. You'd better be damn sure. I am sure, she whispered. Her voice broke on the last word. Takoda's hand brushed her arm just enough to steady her. Mercer's mask slipped, just for a breath. A crack of annoyance. A hint of danger. Then the sheriff said, Mercer, you got anything to say about this? Mercer exhaled slowly. Yes, he said. And he reached for his gun. Elowen's heart lurched. But before he could draw, Takoda was off his horse, moving like lightning despite his wound. He slammed into Mercer, sending the gun skittering across the dirt. The sheriff shouted. Townsfolk screamed. The Apache warriors rose in a single unified surge, weapons at the ready. Stop, Maconie thundered. But Mercer was faster than his calm demeanor had ever hinted. He pulled a knife from his boot and slashed Takoda across the arm. Takoda stumbled, blood streaking fresh down his skin. Elowen reacted without thought. She jumped from her horse and ran toward them. Elowen, get back! Barlow yelled. She ignored him. Takoda grappled with Mercer in the dust, their bodies rolling, limbs locked, dirt flying around them. Mercer's knife flashed again, aiming for Takoda's throat. No, Elowen screamed. She grabbed Mercer's wrist. He snarled, trying to shake her off, but she held on with every ounce of strength she had. Takoda seized the moment-twisted Mercer's arm, and the knife clattered to the ground. Mercer gasped. Takoda pinned him with one knee, chest heaving. Makoni rode closer, looking down with cold fury. "Elias Mercer," the elder said, "you killed one of our own. And you blamed us to start." Elowen woke before sunrise, long before the sky had decided whether to be gold or gray. Her body felt heavy, weighted by sleeplessness and the echo of last night's confession from Takoda, the truth about the murdered ranch hand. The ambush, the man in town using black-fletched arrows to blame the Apache and ignite a war. She rose quietly, careful not to wake him. He slept on her bedroll near the hearth, the bandaged wound across his ribs rising and falling in calm, steady breaths. For the first time in days, his face was not twisted with pain. She watched him a moment, how someone so fierce in presence could look so young in rest. Then she slipped outside. A cold morning wind cut through her shawl. The mountains were just beginning to glow at the edges, but the valley below her cabin. The valley was wrong. Too still. Too quiet. Then she saw it. A long line of figures, still as statues, dark as shadows standing at the tree line. Not 5, not 10. 200. Apache warriors. Elowen's breath caught in her chest. The world tilted. The roaring in her ears drowned out the wind. Takoda's people had come. And they weren't hiding. They weren't riding. They were waiting, a silent wall of warriors stretching across the woods like the front line of a forgotten war. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She felt small against the immensity of it, one woman standing before 200 armed warriors painted for battle. Then a voice spoke behind her. "Don't run." She turned. Takoda stood in the doorway, hair loose, bandaged tight across his ribs, breathing with effort. "You shouldn't be on your feet," she whispered. "I cannot lie in your cabin while my people surround your home," he said, stepping outside to join her. He looked from the warriors to her. "But they are not here to harm you." Elowen swallowed hard. "Then why are they here?" "To see if their leader lives." Her head snapped toward him. "Leader?" Takoda exhaled slowly. "I did not tell you because I did not want you to feel used. But Elowen, I am no ordinary warrior. I am the eldest son of Chief Tahoma." His eyes dropped. "Or I was, until they believed me dead. You think they came because word reached them someone matching my description was taken by the sheriff." He winced as his wound pulled. "When they found my tracks leading here, they assumed you could be holding me captive. Or that you had killed me." A cold knot twisted inside her stomach. "So they came to see for themselves." He looked at her with something like apology. "They came prepared for war if needed." Elowen's voice was barely a whisper. "And if the sheriff arrives before we explain?" Takoda didn't answer. He didn't need to. The sun rose a little higher, just enough to reveal dust clouds rolling up the hill. Sheriff Brody and his men, riders, armed, fast. Elowen's stomach dropped. "They'll see the warriors," she said. "And they'll assume a battle," Takoda finished. "Yes." He straightened despite the pain. "I must speak to my people. Show them I live. And then we face Brody together." Before she could protest, he stepped toward the tree line. Elowen followed close behind. When they reached the edge of the clearing, the warriors' spears shifted, forming an aisle narrow and tense as they recognized him. A ripple moved through the ranks. Men touched their chests, their brows. Others whispered his name like a prayer. A tall, broad-shouldered warrior stepped forward painted in red and black, hair braided with eagle feathers. "Elowen," Takoda murmured. "This is Niall, my friend since childhood. Now acting war leader." Niall's sharp eyes flicked to her. "So this is the white woman who shelters you." Elowen stood tall. "His name is Takoda. And I didn't shelter him, I saved him." Niall studied her for a long, tension-thick moment. Then he nodded once, respectfully. You saved the blood of our chief, he said. For that my people honor you. Takoda spoke. We must withdraw. Now, Brody is coming with men who believe I killed the ranch hand. Niall's jaw hardened. The ranch hand was killed by Ryder Hale's arrow. We have proof. Elowen sucked in a breath. You know his name? Everyone in these mountains knows his crimes, Niall said darkly. He blames us for fires he sets. Livestock he steals. Men he kills. He touched one of the black-fletched arrows hanging at his belt. His mark. Used to ignite hatred. Takoda nodded. Then we end this now. Peacefully, if peace is still possible. But Sheriff Brody's voice cut across the clearing. Elowen, step away from them. The three of them turned. Brody sat atop his horse, 30 armed riders behind him. Guns drawn. Fear twisting their faces. His eyes locked onto Takoda and widened in fury. I told you he was dangerous, Brody snarled. And now look, he brought an army to your doorstep. Niall bristled. Warriors shifted behind him. Takoda stepped forward, raising his hands. Brody, call off your men. We want no bloodshed. Brody barked a laugh. You don't get to make demands. Brody, listen, Elowen said firmly. Takoda didn't kill your ranch hand. The arrow came from Ryder Ha. Enough. Brody snapped. I will not be lied to by a woman who harbors murderers. The words struck Elowen like a slap. Brody raised his Winchester, aiming at Takoda. She didn't think. Didn't breathe. She moved, throwing herself between them. Brody's eyes widened. Elowen, get out of the way. No, she said, voice shaking but unbroken. You want him? You shoot through me. Behind her, she felt Takoda stiffen. Elowen, quiet, she whispered back. For a long moment, the world was still. No wind, no hooves, no breath. Then hoofbeats thundered from behind the sheriff's men. A single rider barreled over the hill at full speed. Ryder Hale. His black coat flapped behind him like raven wings. A rifle lay across his saddle, aimed not at the Apache, but at Sheriff Brody. Brody! Ryder shouted, a wicked grin twisting across his face. Step aside. I'll handle this. Takoda tensed. Niall's hand went to his knife. Elowen's heart pounded. Ryder's horse skidded to a stop. Dust flew. You were supposed to kill the Apache last night, Ryder sneered at Brody, but you botched it. Again. Brody's face twisted. You're behind this? You framed. Yes, I framed them, Ryder snapped. I shot your ranch hand because he caught me stealing Tahoma horses. The Apache were meant to take the blame. His grin turned deadly. But since you can't do one thing right, I guess I'll finish it now. He raised his rifle. At Elowen, Takoda moved faster than thought. He grabbed her arm, pulled her behind him, but Ryder fired. Takoda staggered back. Blood blossomed across his shoulder. Elowen screamed. Everything erupted at once. Apache warriors charged. Brody's men panicked. Gunfire exploded like thunder. Horses reared. Arrows streaked through the air. But Takoda didn't fall. He surged forward, pain forgotten, eyes locked on Ryder. Ryder tried to reload too slow. Takoda slammed into him, dragging him off the horse. They crashed into the dirt, rolling, fists flying, blood spraying. Ryder clawed for his knife. Takoda grabbed it first. Pinned him. The clearing went silent. Ryder froze, breath shaking, knife at his throat. Takoda's voice was low. You spilled the blood of innocent men. You nearly brought war. Ryder's voice cracked. Please, don't. You deserve to face my people's justice, Takoda said. He rose, not killing him, just gripping him by the collar as warriors surrounded them. Brody, face pale, dropped his rifle. "Elowen," he rasped, shame flooding his voice. I didn't know." She didn't forgive him, not then. But she nodded once. It was enough. Naal stepped forward. "Takoda, the council awaits your return." But Takoda looked first to Elowen. His eyes softened. "I will return to them. But I will return to you too." Her breath caught. "You don't have to. I want to." The warriors formed a protective circle around Ryder Halle and moved into the trees. Takoda lingered only a moment longer. He took Elowen's hand, calloused, warm, trembling. "You saved my life," he said softly. "And today, you saved many more." Her eyes glistened. "Come back to me."